What's going on, YouTube? It's your boy, Intergalactic Brew. I'm here to give you my UFC 139 predictions. It's going down San Jose style. I was about to say San Diego. I mean, they're both in the same state though, right? But anyway, it's going down in San Jose, California, this Saturday night, 9 o'clock, 8 Central, exclusively on pay-per-view. I really like this card. Very stacked card. A lot of fight of the night potential candidates or potential fight of the night candidates on this pay-per-view, I should say. I really see a lot of finishes happening on this card. I mean, just from the caliber of fighters, from the opening fight to the co-main event. I mean, just everywhere you look. I mean, it's a lot of potential for submissions or knockouts. I hardly see any decisions happening on this pay-per-view. Probably except one, and I'll get to that a little bit later on. But anyway, without further ado, let's get started with this card, shall we? Here we go. First fight I want to talk about is Stephan Bonnar versus Kyle Kingsbury. Basically, Stephan Bonnar is finding himself in another losable fight. I'm just going to go ahead and be real. I mean, Stephan Bonnar, when it comes to big fights on pay-per-view, has never had favorable matchups. I mean, you look at the John Jones fight. I mean, even with Forrest Griffin, I mean, that fight wasn't on pay-per-view, but it was still a big fight. So, I mean, even with Krzysztof Sosinski, I mean, it just hasn't, gone Stephan Bonnar's way when it comes to big fights. So this one is not any different, with Kyle Kingsbury, who has looked fairly well the past year or so, ever since coming off the Ultimate Fighter Season 8. He got a really good win over Fabio Milando, and he got a couple of other good wins too before that fight. So Kingsbury is he's looking pretty solid right now. Stephan Bonnar, I think he really needs to come out and prove himself this time around. I mean, he's got all the skills, and I believe he's got all the technique too. Excuse me. It's just the simple fact that he just doesn't choose to use them. He would rather just brawl and, get the fight of the night instead of actually trying to catapult himself into the top of the light heavyweight division. But, I mean, that's just how some people's mindsets are. Some people, all they care about is just the fans and, just putting on exciting fights. And that's all good, but at the same time, you have to come to a certain point in your career as a fighter where you're going to be like, okay, am I just going to be a quote-unquote gatekeeper here and just basically entertain the fans, without, striving for winning a championship? Or am I going to really put forth the effort and really put in the time in the gym and really drive myself to be in the top contention or in the circle of top contenders to vie for a championship? I mean, that is what Stephan Bonnar is going to have to come to terms with sooner or later, because I guarantee you, if he keeps losing these fights, I mean, I know he's not going to get cut if he loses this fight, but I mean, if he keeps losing big fights, it's going to come to a point in time where Dana White is just going to throw all the sympathy under the rug, and Stephan Bonnar is going to be cut. So I think this fight here we really need to see the best Stephen Bonner that we've ever seen. Because Kyle Kingsbury, you know he's going to bring it. So with that being said, looking at the fight itself, Stephen Bonner, in this case, is the more well-rounded fighter, believe it or not. I mean, he's got good striking, good submissions. Like I said, he has technique in his striking, but for some reason he just chooses to brawl. And if he does that with Kyle Kingsbury, he will get knocked out. Now, Kingsbury himself has pretty good striking, as we saw in the Fabio Melando fight, and the other victories that he had prior to that fight. So both guys are pretty good standing up. Now, on the ground, I would probably have to give Bonner just a slight edge, just because he is a black belt in jiu-jitsu. But Kingsbury has some solid wrestling of his own, so he won't be a slouch when it comes to the grappling aspect either. So yeah, I think what Kingsbury needs to do is I think he needs to use his technique and be more superior. Oh wait, he needs to use his technique and be technically superior than Stephen Bonner standing up. He needs to use the leg kicks. He needs to keep the distance, circle, let his hands go with the combinations, and try and knock Stephen Bonner out. Now, Stephen Bonner in this case, he will probably need to get the fight to the mat and try and ground Kingsbury, which is not hard. I mean, Kingsbury has been taken down and controlled before in his fight, so Stephen Bonner could do the smart thing and try to put Kingsbury on his back. Because even on the Ultimate Fighter, we saw Kingsbury get taken down, and he didn't fare too well, when he was on his back. So if Stephen Bonner is smart enough to apply that strategy, then of course Stephen Bonner could, submit him or win a decision. But I just think overall, I think just Kingsbury's power is going to be too much for Bonner, and I think he's going to be the more superior striker standing up. And I think Stephen Bonner he's really not going to look for takedowns. I'll be surprised if he looks to take the fight down, but I don't think we'll have to worry about Stephen Bonner taking the fight down to the mat. So I'm just going to pick Kyle Kingsbury by TKO. But I mean, like I said, if Stephen Bonner can surprise me and take the fight down and try to submit Kingsbury, then no surprise there. But I'm going with Kingsbury. Next fight, Martin Kamen versus Rick Story. This is kind of a tough fight to call because, with Martin Kampman, sometimes you really don't know where his head's at. I mean, in certain fights, he'll make good decisions, but then again, in other fights, he won't. So it's kind of a case of which Martin Kampman are we really going to see. I mean, I know that's cliche, but it's true. Because, for instance, the Jake Shields fight, you didn't have to have Albert Einstein in the octagon to tell Martin Kampman that he should have not tried to try and grapple with Jake Shields. You didn't need Albert Einstein to tell him that. I mean, Martin Kampman should have known in that fight how dangerous Jake Shields' grappling was. He's a world champion in jiu-jitsu. He's a top level wrestler. So why go to the mat with him? Martin Kampman had a clear advantage standing up. He could have easily knocked Jake Shields out, or at least rocked him. You know, Martin Kampmann was the superior striker in that fight. We all know that. But what did Martin Kampmann want to do? He wanted to, you know, I guess I guess he wanted to keep his pride, and he wanted to see if he can out-grapple Jake Shields, and he failed. You know, again, not a good decision. Okay, so then we go to the Paul Simtex Daly fight. Again, another bad decision. In this case, he should have tried to out-grapple Paul Daly. We all know Paul Daly does not do well with grappling, whether it be jiu-jitsu or wrestling. We know that. But what did Martin Kampmann want to do? Again, defend that pride, and he decided to stand up with Daly. And what happened? He got ripped apart. Okay, now a couple of fights after that, you know, he was able to get some fairly good wins. You know, Paulo Thiago, he beat him. Jacob Volkman, he beat him. And then we come to Diego Sanchez. Another clear dumb decision. Why would you try and brawl with Diego Sanchez when you're playing right into his hands? Because Diego, he wants to go 100 miles per hour. He wants the fight to be fast-paced. But you, Martin Kampmann, that is not your type of fight. You're supposed to slow the pace down, and you're supposed to try and either ground Diego or technically outstrike him. But no, you chose to brawl. And what happened? You ended up losing the fight. Although I do think he did win that fight in a way. So, but I mean, I guess that's just the price that you pay, man, when you do dumb stuff. So, but anyway, aside from all that, Martin Kampmann will have a chance to redeem himself. Because again, this is another case of where decisions are going to come into play. You're fighting against a guy in Rick Story who wants to get the fight to the ground and beat you up or control you. Okay, so what does Martin Kampmann need to do in this fight? Simple. Try and outstrike Rick. Well, not even try to outstrike. Outstrike Rick Story and knock him out. Simple. Simple strategy. I mean, there's no way around that. Because everybody knows Martin Kampmann is an excellent striker. And Rick Story is not. So basically, Martin Kampmann needs to technically outstrike Rick Story. Simple. Simple. Now, the question is, will he do it? I want to believe he will. I'm hoping he will. But like I said, in certain fights, he makes good decisions. And in other fights, he doesn't. Now, when I say other fights, I mean fights that he knows he can win using his main skill. He doesn't use it. That's what I mean by other fights. But in certain fights, if it's a fighter that he knows he can beat with ease, no disrespect, Paulo Thiago. But yeah. So, who am I going to pick to win this fight? You know what? I am a fair man. I am a man of second chances, or giving somebody a second chance, or the benefit of the doubt. So I'm going to say Martin Kampmann will make the right decision and outstrike Rick Story, stuff the takedowns, and win the fight, possibly by TKO. So I'm going to pick Martin Kampmann to use his head and try to do what he's better at than his opponent. But at the same time, as I'm picking him to win this fight, I think he's going to try to do something dumb and try to fight to the level of his competition. So, There you go. I mean, I hope he proves me wrong. I hope he shuts me up and does the right thing. But anyway. Alright. Next fight. Now we're getting down to the good ones. Now, when I said at the beginning of this video about fight of the night candidates possibly, this is the first of those three. Uriah Faber versus Brian Bowles. Now, if I'm not mistaken, these two guys have never fought each other before, or then again, they may have, but I don't remember these two ever fighting. So this would actually be the first time these two guys meet. I think both of these guys' styles complement each other in a way. Although I think Faber will have the speed, and I think he might be just a little bit more well-rounded than Brian Bowles. Although Brian Bowles is well-rounded himself. As far as power is concerned, I would definitely give that to Brian Bowles. You know, but I don't know, man. I don't know. This is a tough fight to pick because, you know, Faber, he's so explosive and so sudden, you know, with his offense, and he's a damn good grappler on top of that. But so is Brian Bowles. So I don't know, man. I think what it's gonna come down to in this fight is can Brian Bowles counter whatever Uriah Faber is going to throw at him? Because I know one of the strategies definitely that Uriah Faber is going to try to use is his quickness. He's going to try to use angles, and you know, he's going to try to you know, take Brian Bowles down. Well, he's going to try to set up takedowns with Brian Bowles and test his takedown defense with strikes. Although he is a good striker, but definitely Uriah Faber is going to use footwork, and he's going to use you know, flying knees, and like I said, he's going to use combinations, leg kicks, and he's going to look for, he's going to try to look to set up the takedowns when Brian Bowles is not expecting it. Basically, all Brian Bowles needs to do, in my opinion, is he just needs to counter with everything that Faber tries to, like I said, throw at him, standing up, you know, and basically stuff the takedowns. And if he can do that, he's got a good chance. Now, the only thing that concerns me about Faber in this fight is, can he handle Brian Bowles' power? Because Brian Bowles does have one punch knockout power in his right hand, and I believe if he can nail Uriah Faber right on the button with it, I think Faber will go down. Because I mean, you look back at the Mike what's his name, Mike Brown. Sorry, if you look back at the Mike Brown fight, I mean, you know, he was pretty much able to maneuver around Faber and set up that right hand, and once he launched that thing, you know, Faber went down like a ton of bricks. So we could be looking at the same situation, because if you look at Brian Bowles and if you look at Mike Brown, they're kind of similar fighters, although they just fight in different weight classes. So that's the only question I have about Faber. Is he going to be able to handle Brian Bowles' power? Because Brian Bowles does have a lot of it in his fist. So basically, I'm going to go out on a limb. I'm going to say Brian Bowles can pull it off. I'm just not all that confident with Faber fighting against a power puncher the caliber of Bowles. I mean, if he was able to knock out Miguel Torres, and Miguel Torres is tough as hell. He is tough as they come. And if Brian Bowles can lay one good on him and put him to sleep, then I believe he can do it against Faber. I mean, I know Faber, he's a quick guy and he'll be hard to catch. But you know, like I said, I believe if Brian Bowles can find a way to counter Faber and you know, set up that right hand, I believe he can land it on Faber, and I think that's probably what might happen. So I'm gonna go out on a limb, and I'm gonna say Brian Bowles lands that right hand right on the spot with Faber, and he wins the fight by KO. But then again, like I said, it's all of, can he handle the explosive offense that Faber is going to bring to him, and also can he defend the takedowns. So I'm not counting Faber out yet, but I mean, I don't know, man. I just got a feeling Brian Bowles is going to find a way to land that right hand. All right, co-main event of the evening: the axe murderer Wanderlei Silva going up against Cung Le. Now, basically, we all know the storyline here. This is Wanderlei Silva's last and only chance to prove that he's got anything left. Because if Wanderlei, trust me when I tell you this, y'all, if Wanderlei Silva loses this fight, it is over. No ifs, ands, or buts about it. It's over. If Wanderlei Silva loses this fight early, I'll go as so far to say, if Wanderlei Silva loses this fight early, he can just pack it up. Because, I mean, you know, it makes no sense for him to, you know, keep coming in here and basically just getting clobbered like he's been over the past couple of years recently. So Wanderlei is either going to come out and fight like he did against Michael Bisping and forget about trying to entertain the fans so much and get fight of the year, or he's going to actually come out here and put on one of the better performances of his career and actually try to win and beat Cung Le and maybe just slightly get himself into top contention. So that's basically the whole thing surrounding this fight, because Cung Le, I know he's going to come in extremely prepared, and basically, you know, he's going to try to look it in the fight early, just like every other of Wanderlei Silva's opponents have. So that's basically what it is. I believe that if Wanderlei can really utilize technical Muay Thai striking, he can beat Cung Le, because Cung Le has been knocked out before. I'm not overlooking that. I mean, you know, Scott Smith was able to knock out Cung Le. So Cung Le is vulnerable of getting stopped. But the only difference between Wanderlei Silva and Scott Smith is Wanderlei Silva is way older than Scott Smith, and Wanderlei's chin is a lot softer, way more softer than Scott Smith's. So basically, what I think is going to happen is Cung Le's going to come out and he's going to feel Wanderlei out for maybe the first 4 minutes of the fight, and then once Wanderlei starts to get aggressive and come forward, that's when you're going to see Cung Le really strike. And I think once Cung Le strikes, it's going to be too late for Wanderlei, and Wanderlei is going to have to hang it up. So I'm picking Cung Le to win the fight by TKO. And it's going to be early. This fight will not go to 3 rounds. I will be surprised. I will be thoroughly surprised if this fight goes to 3 rounds. And I hear everybody talking about, oh, Vanderlei is going to come out and, swarm Kung Lee, and Kung Lee's not going to be able to handle it and stuff. Trust me, Kung Lee is nothing like Chris Lieben or Michael Bisping or anybody else that Vanderlei has fought. Kung Lee is a true, striker. He's almost an Anderson Silva type, if you want to put him in a category with somebody. His striking, his style is kind of similar to Anderson's, although he's more of a Taekwondo / Sanshao type of style as opposed to pure Muay Thai. So, I think that Kung Lee is very aware of that wild, aggressive style of Vanderlei, and he's going to, use his footwork and circle and use angles, and he's going to be accurate with his strikes, and he's going to land. I mean, Vanderlei might catch him with a couple of shots. He might catch him with a couple of shots. But, I think Kung Lee is going to be a little bit too quick for Vanderlei. And, like I said, he's just going to be, right on the money and accurate with his strikes. And, like I said, he once he lands that one good shot, Vanderlei's done. So, that's basically that. Okay, now it is time. That was an ugly drum roll. Wait a minute, let me do it again. There we go. Now it is time to discuss the main event. Mauricio Shogun Rua versus Dan Hendo Henderson. Now, this fight, another tough pick. Man, this is kind of like a styles clash. Good old fashioned styles clash fight, because you've got the wrestler, or basically the grappler versus the striker, pretty much. Although, Dan Henderson is a good striker himself, along with that world class wrestling. So, basically what we're looking at here is Shogun trying to be the first guy in the past few months to really slow down Hendo and stop this inspirational momentum he's having throughout the rest of this year. I mean, if you just look at what the guy's accomplished, I mean, he beat Fei Zhao for the light heavyweight title, knocked him out. I've never seen that done before with Fei Zhao. He just recently knocked out Fedor. I've never really seen Fedor knocked out before. I mean, nobody has. So that was, a mega win for him. Just basically beat down Babalu. Was the first man to knock out Michael Bisping before he left the UFC. So Dan Henderson is been on a magical win streak, and Shogun is trying to be the first guy to stop that. Can he do it? Yeah, of course he can. Of course he can. But at the same time, Dan Henderson can beat Shogun as well. And he could possibly be the first guy to knock out Shogun, which has never been done before. So this fight is very intriguing. But basically, I think, just looking at the fight itself, I just think if Shogun presses forward on Henderson, I believe he can beat him. Just as simple as that. And I think with Hendo, I think, as much as he hints of trying to knock out Shogun, I think he's going to try to take this guy down. Because, I mean, as much as I like Shogun, being real Shogun's wrestling is not all that good, and his takedown defense is really not all that good either. I mean, Mark Coleman revealed that to the world. Um, John Jones revealed that to the world. Um, Even Lyoto Machida was able to take him down. So did I don't know. I don't think Chuck took him down, but definitely Lyoto took him down. So that's a very vulnerable spot that Shogun leaves himself in. So I think as far as those leg kicks and everything is concerned, um, I think he might have to cut that down to a T. Well, not to a T, but just cut it down to a minimum. And I think he just has to, look for his openings as far as leg kicks is concerned. But definitely the boxing is definitely favorable for him in the fight. Because if he just comes out and tries to outbox Dan Henderson, I think he's got a better chance of beating him that way as opposed to trying to use those leg kicks. Because, with the leg kicks, when you're fighting a wrestler, that's very easy for you to get taken down. So I think just basically what Shogun needs to do is use his footwork, and just press forward on Hendo with the flurry of punches like he always does. And if he knows that Henderson is going to counter, then just get out of there. Press forward, but come back to the center of the octagon. Now, as far as Hendo is concerned, I think standing with Shogun here would be kind of a bad move, but hey, that's what I said about him when he fought Feijao. That's the same thing I said about him when he fought who was I forget. But Dan Henderson is confident with his hands, and he truly believes he can knock out Shogun. So, who knows? But if I was Henderson, just to be smart about the situation, I would try to utilize the wrestling ability and take Shogun down and, try to ground and pound him. There's still a chance he can knock him out. It's just that I don't feel with Shogun's style, Dan Henderson standing up with this man. Now with Fedor, you can, to be fair, you can say Fedor is not really a technical striker. He's more just like of a Vanderlei Silva type, just real wild and loops a lot of stuff, but it lands. And when it lands, it knocks you out. But Shogun is a little bit more technical and a little bit more sharp with his striking. So I think Hendo, in this case, would probably need to out-grapple Shogun and try to ground and pound him on the ground. So I think that'd be the best move for Hendo. But with Hendo, you don't know. But as far as the fight goes, let me see, man. Shoot. Oh man, I really don't want to pick against Shogun, because that's what my mind is telling me to do, is to pick Dan Henderson, but my gut is telling me to go with Shogun. Man, oh gosh, this is so tough. Okay, I can't believe I'm about to do this. But I'm gonna go with Dan Henderson in this fight. I feel so bad, because I've just underestimated Dan Henderson so many times in his past few fights recently. I've underestimated him, and I've always been wrong. So I'm gonna have to go with Dan Henderson in this fight, and I'm gonna pick him to win by by decision, split decision. Dan Henderson. I'll be surprised if he's able to knock out Shogun. I really will. If he knocks out Shogun, well, you know what? I take that back. I won't be surprised if he stops Shogun. But yeah, man. I mean, you know, just being that I've been so wrong in picking against Dan Henderson lately, I'm gonna have to roll with him this time. I'm sorry, Shogun. I still love you, man. You know, you're still one of my favorite fighters, and I still do believe. I mean, I still do believe, I should say, that you can beat Dan Henderson. I mean, I'm still giving you a great chance to beat Henderson. I hope you prove me wrong, just so I can feel better and knock out Dan Henderson. You know, so I won't feel any regret of picking against you, but I just got a feeling, you know, with the momentum that Henderson has, and also with him being, you know, the better grappler here, and having knockout power in that right hand, or in both hands, I should say. I just see somewhere in the fight him landing that right hand on Shogun when Shogun's not expecting it, and Shogun's gonna go down. So, but I hope Shogun proves me wrong and knocks out Dan Henderson early in the fight. So there you have it. I'm going with Dan Henderson by TKO. But that's all for me. Like I said, it's going to be an awesome card. Like I said, I expect to see at least 2 fight of the night candidates here. But I know it's going to be some awesome endings to the fight, whether it be by submission or whether it be by knockout. So there you go. Real quick, for the preliminary card, I'm picking Jason Brills over Ryan Bader, and I'm picking I guess I'll go with Michael McDonald over Alex Soto. So there you have it. That's my predictions. UFC 139 is going to probably be one of the better cards of this year. Could be up for pay-per-view of the year. Let's cross our fingers and hope so. But I'm going to get on out of here. Y'all enjoy the fights. Peace.